Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Good morning, Mateo. How are you?
I'm fantastic, brother, as usual. How are you?
Good. 51st episode today. We made it. We did the year. We put out like insane stats. Like I can't believe it. Really, really proud of what we built, and excited to start our second year with an amazing guest today.
Awesome. Yeah, man. And before we dig into our amazing guest, who I can't wait to get in and dig in and talk to, on that note, brother, just want to say thank you to you for everything that you've done to make this podcast a success. I don't think, people know the amount of work that goes on behind these podcasts, and to be around for a year is a hell of an achievement. Proud to have done it with you. I appreciate all the work and sweat equity that you put into this to make it happen. So shout out to Will, shout out to HFM, shout out to my partner, John, and get ready, and everyone out there. And last but not least, thank you to all of you who listen, download, support us, have told us and walked up to us and told us you love the show. Well, we appreciate it. And, we appreciate you for listening. And, we're just going to get better and better. And we're going to bring you new, fresh content and all the things you want to hear and didn't think you want to hear moving forward in the future. So,
and if you like what you hear, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Help us out. Scratch our backs. Please leave a review. We have a 5-star rating of 7 reviews. So, hey,
man,
just saying,
got to take the wins where they come. Can we get to our guest, man?
Please. Let's get to our guest.
All right, man. So this week, fresh out of the RMA, we are honored to have someone that is a vet in the industry for as long as I've been in this space. I've always heard his name in a positive light. I was honored to meet him early on in my career in Smoky Mountain place or Vegas. It was somewhere where we met up. But the one and only David Angotti, formerly of Smoky Mountain Rentals in Smoky Mountain and SmokyMountains.com. Presently at StaySense, and just overall great guy if you really get to know him, and those who know. And David, welcome to the show. We are so happy to have you here with us. I didn't go too far deep into your resume because we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but welcome to the show, brother.
Man, thank you, Mateo. Thank you, John. Excited to be here and be a part of what you guys are doing for the industry, and congrats on an awesome first year. 7 5-star reviews is actually like 35 stars, right? If I'm doing my math correct.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's a heck of a rating.
Technically, yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's a lot of stars.
That's like moms, uncles, and your wives,
truly,
everybody. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I can't even convince my mom to go ahead and leave a 5-star review. So.
I can't either. I've been horrible about asking now. It's John. So we're just gonna need to make T-shirts that have the No Bullshit Short-Term Rental podcast on the front, and then leave a 5-star review on the back. It's like a QR code that goes directly there.
Yeah, leave a fucking review. All right.
That's awesome. No, thank you guys for having me on. Excited to be a part of this and hang out with you guys this morning and talk about what's I think all of our favorite space, vacation rentals, short-term rentals, and what's going on there. So
what's interesting to me is that our paths truly, and I cross paths with most people. And I've heard your name and I've known what you do. And I've talked to business partners of yours in the past. Like I know the David Angotti story decently. But we, you mentioned earlier when we were BSing a little bit, and even though it's no BS, sometimes we do BS, when we were chatting before we hit record, that we met truly in person for the first time, very briefly, just a couple weeks ago in Chicago, which is absolutely blows my mind. But I'd love to. Why are we staying so far apart? Do I have like this force field around me? Am I just unapproachable?
Yeah. I mean, you do have that force field, so I'm not going to take that from you. But I think a lot of it has to do with COVID and just like no conferences for a while, no hanging out, no going out to the bars together, all that for a few years, and then honestly, there was a time there right before COVID too, where I was taking it a little easy on the conference circuit, just concentrating in on launching a new brand and some things with that that took some time away from those personal connections out and about. So, but yeah, I mean, I can't give you an answer other than that on how our paths haven't crossed in a more meaningful way before now.
I think it's on both of us. We're just not going to allow it to happen in the future.
No, but it's amazing though, because at DARM, I was with both of you. And I feel like I was with both of you at the same event. Above and beyond.
But was it 2 a.m? Because that could also
not with me.
No,
John goes to bed early to bed.
John goes to bed early, so that's probably why. That's probably
It started
and when John and I met up in Smoky Mountains, like we were talking, you weren't at that conference.
Yeah.
So you and I had to meet another time, and that's when I met John. Oh, look at the providence.
And here we are.
Here we are. So speaking of here we are, man, how did we get here? So I think, I was introduced to you when you and I met. You were just transitioned. You were in the process of transitioning SmokyMountains.com and launching into your new space. But dude, let's start it. We got to go back to the beginning, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Like, where were you at when you got into this space, and what were you doing in the years 2004 to 2009?
Yeah, so this is kind of like a crazy wild ride through those years. 2009 is kind of actually where I came into the space. So if you back up, it's the path into the space, which I was actually a pilot for NetJets. That was my profession at that point. I was flying the fastest passenger plane in the world, and basically flying the rich and the famous. And so that was life. It was going well. I was at like my final career destination, I felt like, and life was good. Around that same time, we launched an ed tech startup. And that thing just took off. It went to the moon very quickly. So when we exited that ed tech startup, it was like, I'm sitting here, 29 years old at that time, 2009. I'm like, okay, I'm done. This was a good ride, and I'm done. I've given the world what I have to give. It's time to retire. And that lasted, I think, 4 weeks. So it was a great 4-week retirement there that first time. And but when I came back and started to work again, I wanted something meaningful that wasn't just like a bank account number to show like, okay, we just had accomplished something. So we bought a really nice property out in the Smoky Mountains. It was it was 6-7 hour drive from where we were living at that point. I'm like, we're going to have that property, so there's something tangible to show for the success we had, not just like numbers on an account somewhere. And so we went out there, we started to use different property management companies, because I was really afraid of like trying to self-manage, or just didn't know the processes, all of that. And I wasn't real satisfied with the internet marketing of any of these companies in 2009, which probably comes as a shock. It was like this set it and forget it pricing. There were 3 prices, you had your low, your shoulder, and your high season pricing. Right. And you knew it was going to be like a buy 3, get the 4th night free if you were further out. Then it'd be like buy 2, get 2 free as you get closer. It was like the early days of yield management kind of. And none of them did a great job. And so we enter what I call the naive optimism period of my short-term rental experience, where I'm looking at 400 plus companies in the Smoky Mountains and thinking, none of these guys can do it as good as me. I'm going to start a property management company. And so my good friend Wes Melton and I had been tossing around these different business ideas, and we decided, hey, we're going to do this short-term rental property management company in one of the most competitive markets in the entire US, do it from scratch. And so we went after it, and it was a journey. We grew to, I think it was about 130 properties organically over a 24-month time period. And it was a fun ride, but man, it was a lot of work. And all of these things, it's like your mind fills in gaps on something like that. And all of the gaps, we fill them in as like these easy things. And none of those gaps are actually easy. And you can start to realize that one failure at a time. And, a couple of years in, we're both Wes and I are looking at each other and it's like, this isn't what a couple of tech guys are cut out to do. We're meeting with the city and engineers and permits and, all this stuff that goes into property management or owner meetings constantly, like where, there's a stain on the carpet. It doesn't matter that we just doubled your revenue over last year. Let's talk about this stain right here in this one spot. Right. And it's just like, wow, this isn't really.
We could do a whole episode just on owner meetings.
Oh yeah. And so,
I think we need to do owner meetings.
Do a whole podcast
owner meetings uncensored, so people can really just get in there and talk about it. And
maybe a therapy session.
I think that's a great idea, John. We should actually do that.
I still have some stuff I need to work through on that. So when you guys launch that therapy group, let me know.
I'll be participating too, John. So I won't just be leading. I'll definitely.
But it kind of started to set us up because we really learned that side of the table really well. I'd say more than most OTAs or listing sites, because we sat in that seat for an incredibly hard couple of years. And so now when all of a sudden a property management company we're dealing with comes to us and says, hey, this listing's showing up incorrectly on your website, I understand that's not just like an inaccuracy. This is a highly emotional like undercurrent that's happening in the background of an owner wearing out this property manager that's then coming to us and then saying we need this updated. And so like there's this better understanding, a more holistic understanding of their side of the table from that. So I want to give back that experience for anything. However, we did move past that, and we divested the property management brand to V-Trips and Steve Milo. He and I are good friends to this day, and that was a fun experience, handing off all of the headaches to him and getting paid to hand off those headaches to him, and
shout out to Steve.
Yeah, and he's done a great job with it. He's kept most of those owners and even staff members from that time, which that was in 2016. Yep. Like any good acquisition, it had its wrinkles right up to the end. And the Gatlinburg wildfires actually tore through town the night before we were supposed to close. And so
Wes mentioned this. I remember this when we were talking we had Wes on, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago now. And he mentioned this. This is insane.
Yeah, so it tears through, and like we thought the deal was going to fall through over that. Ultimately, it still goes through, and made us even more thankful that for the relationship with Steve, watching him take care of our owners afterwards, and help the owners and help the staff following that. So that like kind of takes us up to like, okay, now we have this micro OTA, this niche OTA in one market, the Smoky Mountains market. And from there, we had this brand that we built because we only divested off the owner contracts, not SmokyMountains.com, the domain and the content. Mm-hmm. And so we built considerable value as a brand at that point. And so we basically then started to onboard property management companies and grew pretty aggressively in that market for a few years. And, during that time, we started to realize, hey, we have something that we could duplicate into other markets. And that's kind of the story of how we hop into StaySense eventually, because as we launched Florida and Hawaii, it got really confusing to a property management company to tell them, hey, why don't you go ahead and opt into Smoky Mountains and we'll distribute your properties down to Destin. That just doesn't make any sense. So StaySense almost became like a holding company, if you will, or an umbrella over the multiple brands down below it there. So, but yeah, that's the very short version of the story. What I would say is we've done a lot of things that are really cool in marketing along the way, really cool with people along the way. And then, just some wild things that I would have never seen coming. Like I ended up developing a neighborhood of purpose-built homes with a guy in the Smoky Mountains market. We built like 35 homes together out there. So we've done a lot of these like little things that actually round out like my understanding of the industry, because like now I'm sitting here, I've been a property owner with property management companies. I've done rent by owner. I've been a property management company. I've been a developer, purpose built, and now I own multiple, niche OTAs. And so it's like, I feel like I've touched almost everything but housekeeping at this point. So that's next, but not, so it's
Jeremy,
been a fun ride.
Look out.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I love that. And I love this because this is my shared personal experience in, again, if you've listened to this podcast, I say this all the time, theory versus application, right? and especially the value of that from someone that is also creating tech, creating, platform, creating tools to, solve problems in real world time. Right. And the understanding that you get from being hands-on. And it's interesting to see that webbed approach to like each aspect of the business, the building, the managing, the tech, the platform. Like, I don't think people understand the value. Well, I mean, I think they do theoretically, but not really. Again, I think we would have more advancement in our technology and in our products. I think they would be more valuable if there was more of that experience driven into that, right? If more of the people who were actually creating this stuff were actually continuously hands-on in a way that they knew these problems quicker. But yeah, I love that approach, man.
For sure. Yeah. So every year, like at the end of the year, I try to write down the biggest thing I learned in the past year. And I think it was in 2019, happened across this thing called Kruger Dunning. Not sure if you guys have heard of that before, but basically it was these psychologists, and they did this intense survey of this group of people to basically grade people on their knowledge versus their perceived knowledge. And it's a fascinating study. Highly recommend going and reading it. It applies to like everything, but like a really common example is that Monday morning, like coaching of the NFL teams, like, oh, I would have done this if I were the coach. Nice. And it's like, and people honestly believe that they have a better capacity to understand this game than the coaches and the analytic coaches and the people that's poured over tape for several hundred hours, than the person that's the experts. So, Monday morning, people go back and look at that. And we have that in our industry too, like where people that don't understand those knowledge gaps just fill in those knowledge gaps with expertise that they don't actually have. And that's really what Kruger Dunning is all about. It's like this idea that sometimes you don't know enough to know what you don't know, really, is it in a nutshell. And that, like, kind of coming to grips with that as I matured in the industry and felt like I knew less about the industry as I knew more about the industry was an important thing to understand. And it kind of speaks to what you were just talking about a second ago, Mateo, of like, hey, that multifaceted experience that each of us have, we bring that expertise that maybe other people don't have. And like, how do we share that with each other? It's through mediums like this, doing these podcasts where we're trying to soak up that information and really understand that other side of the table, the other side of the coin. It's like, it's so important in any business, but especially short-term rentals when we're dealing with like multiple two-sided marketplaces, layered on top of each other, and complexities of non-standardized products, with all these different types of employees to make this whole thing go. Everything from like high-level tech employees all the way down to part-time labor at, a laundry facility that scales up and down based on demand. Right. And then you think about all the different stakeholders along the way, all the different profit holders along the way. And this is like a business class nightmare to even like write a paper on this, much less live it. So, it's insane.
Thinking about this just kind of makes my mind boggle. And and that's where, Mateo, and obviously you've lived both sides of it. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that. I have worked in multiple different sides of the vendor side of the space. So I've seen different angles, from payment processing to marketing to, PMS to now to, the OTA side of things. But it's, I will never have that working hand knowledge of, of what, say, being a property manager and understanding, that side of things. But that's where this podcast is so like super, super valuable to me, is I've had the opportunity along with Mateo to speak with 50 of 51 now of some of the brightest minds in the space and really get to dig deep and dive into all these things and understand. I think I have a greater grasp and understanding of most, but I still don't have that practical hands-on yet. So I'll figure that out one of these days. Well, but it's
part of it is also cultural too. It's, we have a business or professional culture that supports kind of this false, again, if you're selling a product, you have to be the best and you have to be the professional, even though you may not be all of that, right? Like we don't, in our business interactions, approach this as, hey, well, I have a skill set, you have a skill set, maybe together we can solve these things. It's like, oh, I'm the expert in this space and I'm going to tell you how my product is going to solve your problem, instead of saying, hey, this is what we have to offer. Let's talk about how we can solve solutions for you, right? Like that's a completely different mindset. But in maybe not everyone, but I see a lot of these sales reps and a lot of these people in sales feel like they have to, even though they, may have been in this position 2-3 weeks, a year, 6 years, they always have to be, considered the expert in that space. And they're not. No. And they're talking to people that have been in this space and this is their livelihood, and that they're the experts. They're the ones that have the knowledge, right? Like they're the ones that have the real life experience and the knowledge. And I don't know. I just feel like it's a cultural thing.
I think in all sales, if we're looking at this side of things, that you have to put yourself to be successful in a sales role. I've been a big believer in relationship building and true relationship building and understanding the needs and being a good listener, and to go ahead and be a good listener and actually listen to, where the actual pain points, and try to actually understand, what the problems are. You can actually come and gain a ton of knowledge of this. In my current role, I spent the first 3 months reaching out to property managers and interviewing them and asking them, hey, how do I build an OTA that doesn't suck? Like, and tell me, like, how do I do this? And really understanding and coming back, I don't know how to do that. Or, dive deeper, tell me more, like that kind of, those type of questioning and understanding, that's what breeds success. But I think there are few and far between that actually go ahead and will actually put that into application.
I think you bring up a good point. Like, you have these property managers, right? We can reach out to them. We can ask them, hey, what do you need? And so that's almost like becomes like this team of free consultants. That's how we approach it here internally. Like when somebody complains about something, instead of viewing it as a complaint, we actually have a subject matter expert that's on the ground in Gatlinburg or on the ground in Destin or in Maui or wherever they are. And they know the market way better than we know the market, maybe. And they understand the guest needs better than maybe we understand the guest needs. And now we're getting this advice, not from one, but like dozens of these companies like this that basically make up this team of people that are coming to us free of charge. They're actually paying us to offer us advice that you literally couldn't buy to make our unique selling proposition stronger.
Paying you to consult for you.
Right. And it's like that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Yeah. But like most people pride is a hard thing to overcome, and you must overcome pride to be able to take that free consulting, I think. And so, when we get too good to take the feedback of our customers, that's a dangerous spot. That's where our unique selling proposition and our business selling points are going to start to falter, because we're no longer serving the needs of our customers. And of course, in this business, it is more complex because we have two sets of customers, and those customers compete against each other. And so we have to filter through the recommendations that we're getting from property managers or guests, because ultimately those competing interests, can be a challenging thing to overcome.
I'd like to throw in a third customer, homeowners. There's actually 3 customers that we deal with every day.
That's a fact.
Yeah. So like the way we explain it to somebody that's new to the industry that starts here is like, we have 2 sets of customers, and our customers have 2 sets of customers. And so like, basically we have that downstream final customer, that's the homeowner. And they're also a customer indirectly of ours. But so it's like this multi-layered 2-sided marketplace is the way we typically explain it.
It's insane. Yeah, it's insane. Like we were talking about doing a podcast once where we just invite people, like family members on, and ask them to describe what we do for a living. Like, can you imagine like inviting inviting my grandma and asking her what I do for a living? I don't know. It's pretty complex.
John, I'm sure you could figure, you're a great communicator. You'd figure out a way to tell her that one of the oldest businesses in the world, right? Short-term renting, which has been around since we've been staying in, structures. I don't know, maybe they rented caves out, or I don't know, whatever. But you can say that, look, you're advancing that through technology. See, there's always a way to explain it. It's just,
like if somebody asks me what we do, and it's a lofty goal, but what we try to do is help each visitor into each market that we serve. And that doesn't mean each visitor that stays with us or that books through us or even books through the property managers. Like, this is literally what we were founded on. When we founded the company, we didn't even know we were going into short-term rentals at that point. We just knew that we understood content marketing really well. We understood technology. And so we wanted to positively impact every vacation to that area. And we felt like if we did that, we were going to figure out the monetization later on. And so that has been our playbook as we launch additional markets. So like, if you look at like HawaiianIslands.com, our third brand that we're in the process of launching right now, that's building traffic to it right now, the play there has been, we have now photographed over 1,000 points of interest with professional photography. You know, we're doing that pre-revenue. We're doing that to help end users. We're reviewing all of those things. We're sending our team to go hike the mountains and to take pictures of the waterfalls and all that, because we've really just adopted this idea. If we help every visitor to each region, then we develop trust for both ourselves and our clients. And in doing so, over time, it lifts up the industry, lifts up each of us. And so that's been like, kind of like, that's how I explain it to my mom or my grandma, is like, what do you do? I help every visitor that comes to the Smoky Mountains, or every visitor that comes to the Panhandle. And you know, how do I do that? Well, let's say you're trying to pick a restaurant. How do you do it today? Okay, you can either go to TripAdvisor and see a bunch of sideways blurry photos, or you can go to like an advertorial. So we kind of tried to bridge that gap. We have professional reviewers that go in and they'll say, hey, this steak is dry, don't get the steak here. But then we'll simultaneously have professional photos at the same place and insider tips of like how to get your family member up on stage at a dinner theater, that type of thing. And so it's just like, how do we help people? And I think that could actually be a true story for either of your businesses as well. It's like, when we help the broader market, that's how this whole thing moves forward in my mind.
Well, it comes to a great question, and you've kind of said it in a roundabout way, but you know, like for the person, and there's probably maybe one or two people that are listening to this podcast that don't know what StaySense is. Like, explain, like, outside of what you do, like, what is your elevator pitch? And I hate using that term, but you know what I mean, for someone that's never been exposed to StaySense.
Yeah, so we're a family of niche listing sites. Right now we have 3: SmokyMountains.com, FloridaPanhandle.com, and HawaiianIslands.com. What sets us apart is, instead of going head to head with the big OTAs on paid marketing channels, we build each of those brands to millions and millions of website visitors a year through organic methods. And so that's basically, how do we develop content that reaches as far and as wide as possible in a helpful way? And in doing so, we will then inevitably be in the conversation when it comes time to book a property as well, whether somebody's searching Gatlinburg cabins or whatever the term might be. They'll see our brand raised to the top, oftentimes even above Airbnb or Vrbo or any of the other big players that are out there, Hopper, whoever. You know, here we are, we rise to the top. And then it's, you know, and that's how we monetize it ultimately. But like, if you go like on our page and you search something like Chimney Tops Trail, and you see cinematic videography and photography and these words on the page that tell you exactly what to expect when you go to Chimney Tops Trail, there's no ads on that page. Even that page is there to help you. But in doing so, we naturally start to attract this traffic that's repeat visits to most of these destinations we're in, links and search engine authority over time, which then builds up the monetizable side of the business, really.
I wanted, the interesting fact, you mentioned Hopper, and I hate why I love talking Hopper, but
of course you do. No shameless plug here.
But the interesting thing today, you'll never see Hopper competing for marketing dollars, because that's not where we're never going to go in and do paid search. That's not what we're doing. I'm not going to say what's not what we're going to do in the future, but that's not what we're doing today. All of our, you know, it's a closed user group, and all of our stuff is our marketing dollars goes to like TikTok and streaming services like Hulu and stuff like that. So you'll see commercials, and we're going for that demographic, but you're never going to compete with us in, say, Smoky Mountains or Hawaii or any of those. But I absolutely love that. I mean, that's what you're doing, and that organic reach in the is necessary, and more companies, well, you hope no other companies do it, but I think it's the right approach. Because when I travel with my family, I'm looking for experiences, and I'm looking for, the actual, not necessarily the paid sponsorship, come here, do this, do that. I'd love to see those, to go that chimney top, and see that video and be like, holy shit, we need to go do this. And have it organically drive me to a short-term rental that I can go ahead and book for my family. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so like one correction there is I wish everybody would do this. Like, it's not, I really, we talk about the rising tide lifting all ships. And I really believe in that to the extent when we were brand new in property management, there's a company in the market, Cabins USA there. Mm-hmm. And they were huge compared to us. We had one property at this point. And Chris Lacey, who was their VP of marketing at that time, he reaches out to me. He's like, hey, I saw your writing on Search Engine Journal and Moz, these different things. I'm excited you're coming into the market. I have these SEO challenges I'm trying to figure out on this website redesign. I'm guessing the answer is no, since we're about to be competitors, but could you help me with that? And I ended up meeting him for coffee and providing him some guidance via email. And it's one of those things where it's like, no, like the enemy wasn't Cabins USA at that point. Like this was in 2010, 2000, this would have been 2013 at this point. And the enemy wasn't Cabins USA, it was the hotels. Like when you looked, and it's like, I wanted Cabins USA to develop like a great website and give users great experiences in the market, because I knew they'd be back the next year. And if I took care of them that year, then they might be over to Beatrix the next year, and then back to Chris the next year. And it's like, we all need to take good care of these people. And when we do that, like, we're going to see this space continue to expand. It's like the competition, I think, at some point it's going to become each other, but I don't think we're at that point yet. I think we're at a point where we're still just like expanding rapidly. And it's
right now the competition is, it's regulations. That's our competition right now. And it's big pockets that are, spurring up these things. And maybe it's still hotels because, they have the deeper pockets, and they're, look at Honolulu right now and what they're dealing with, which is absolutely horrible. And that's just one of dozens of across the country right now. I
don't think we're going to overcome that. As awesome as like $465,000 that was raised like in a few minutes is. It's like, you look at the amount of money the hotel lobbying groups have, and then the different OTAs have. And they're aligned more with hotels at this point, unfortunately. It's like, we're going to overcome it with really positive experiences for end users, almost like Uber did. It's like, make these people want this so bad that we basically have an army of people acting on our behalf. And then we use the $465,000 to mobilize that army, not to go like buy off politicians like the other side's doing, but rather have like a whole army of people that are leaning on the politicians and helping with the change that has to happen. So just my 2 cents.
No, that's what this is about. We want your 2 cents.
But it's worked. Yeah. It's worked in other industries. And it's like, that's how we're going to win this. Like we have to have fanatical customers that will go to bat for us. So like, otherwise, like the hotel industry, it's much more consolidated than vacation rentals are. And they're going to be able to have a louder voice due to that consolidation and then the deep pockets that each of those voices has.
Do we get to a point where we're all in the mix together? Are we ever going to be the big bag of Skittles, like that everything in terms of hospitality, right? Like where we're all considered and maybe even have some commonality? Like, do you see that happening? Is there always going to be this us and them? And I guess
so. Yeah. I mean, we haven't reached that in our small slice of hospitality. So like, if we can't reach like that unified voice on just short-term rentals, then it's really hard to think about us being able to reach it with hotels in the mix and other things in the mix as well.
Well, it seems like hotels are adopting it, right? Like hotels it seems like hotels are taking on aspects of what we do because of their situations, right? Because of the place that they find themselves in right now, right? So, you have condo hotels now, boutique hotels that, the more they mimic or operate like short-term rentals, the better they seem to do, right? Is a data shown. But you see the hotels doing that. Does it get to this place where we're this Venn diagram and there's this space in the middle or is it always just going to be that? Will we ever be under one umbrella, or will we always just kind of coexist in this little hybrid space that's flexible and works with whatever way the wind blows?
Man, it's a tough question. I think, like, when we think about the practical implications of your question, what you call out there, condotels, or even traditional hotels like the Hilton in Chicago, where we had the VRMA conference at, I got hit with an email. I don't know if you guys saw the same one. And basically, they have a vacation rental within the hotel. Yeah. And they hit me with messaging about, like, hey, why stay, at a vacation rental? Like, this was after checkout, when we have like this 4-bedroom place with daily housekeeping and all the advantages, more or less, of a vacation rental and of a hotel. And so we're going to be hit with that. So how are we going to respond to that? I think that's like the first takeaway from your question. But yeah, they're absolutely going after us. And like, you take markets like Vegas, the condotels there, whether it's Palms or MGM or all of them. So we actually own a unit in the MGM there. And so it's like, you can see, like, okay, there's this marriage happening slowly in some of these urban markets, especially because of regulations. And it's like, they're able to get through some of that regulatory red tape because they are the hotel lobbying group. Yeah. And so, like, you start to look at something like that, maybe that's part of the path forward, is aligning, kind of like what you're talking about, all under one umbrella. This is like,
yeah, but
it's interesting because and that's nothing new though either. Though the W's been doing it forever, right? You got the resident, the Four Seasons, like living in hospitality, coexisting has been in short
Marriott, Ritz,
even short-term letting, right? Like even in traditional commercial real estate, multifamily real estate, they short-term let. They have in-law suites in those buildings that are furnished that they rent out. It points at a time now to a very more directed kind of audience. I get it, but the model's been there. We've seen different models that have worked and that are continuing to work. And I don't know. I just think it's very interesting. I think we're going to see more of that. I think especially with cities like Atlanta, where there's a lot of very high-end, nice multifamily real estate that's just sitting there and occupied, and it's not viable for, housing for everyone. So what do you do with that?
Yeah. I mean, we have some of that happening here in Nashville right now, and it's not going to shrink as a percentage of the market. That's for sure. So,
yeah. No, I mean, I think the scary thing about it is, it's all coming together one way or another, but we're not necessarily all playing nice together. So when we're all together, we're all in this mosh pit together, and we're trying to go ahead and, and you had a great point, David. If we can go ahead and align as a short-term rental / vacation rental, ideals and what's appropriate and what's and what our focus as an industry should be, and how do we go about this. And there's lots of different things we can talk about with regards to unifying code and all these different things to make things a lot. There's places that I think that there are people are striving and companies are striving to get there, but no one's really saying this is how it has to be. This is what we need to do, because everyone wants to be, in charge or have that great idea, as opposed to aligning together and coming up with a solution. And until who
gets to say that? Who does that?
I don't know. I mean, these are
like, again, is there this secret like mafia of like vacation rentals? Maybe there is. So let me stop talking about it.
Yeah,
but like, who gets to?
We want to keep our sponsorship.
Who gets to make that decision? Because if you remember, and Dave, you remember from VRMA that, and I don't know if they're still pushing forward with Steve and that group, that they were pushing for kind of this commonality within the space to get a common API language, common structure and standards for our industry. And I think the last time I heard anything about that was like New Orleans in 2019.
You have to look at it this way too. And I love, we'll give you a second here to jump in, David. I'm sorry. It's ripping a Band-Aid off for absolutely everybody if we're going to go ahead and do this. And everyone, when you go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off, unless you're the one or two companies that have already gone ahead and put the right foot forward and the right efforts forward, everyone else is then put on pause. And no, we don't have the developers. We don't have the engineers. We don't have any of this to go ahead. Like the resources there and the logistics behind this is a friggin' nightmare. And until we all decide we need to rip this Band-Aid off and we have to do it right now, someone always wants is, we're all vying for that top position as far, because let's face it, everything's based on revenue.
But you don't even know what that is. What are you building for? You can't even answer that. Like, you don't know, you can't say it's going to be like, oh, it's going to be all this dev resource and all this other work. Yes, you have an idea, but to build what?
No, but if you have to rebuild all your code, or like, for example, if I'm just looking at like different like OTA connections, and I can look at every one of them separately and know how their code is, like there isn't one that's 100%. Now, if we can go back to like, say, like HASP standards and say, like, the Homeowner 7.2, whatever that is, like, and we start here and we build from there. And everyone needs to go. That's a different story.
I think that's the only way you to get it, to do it equitably across the board. And Dave, please jump in. But that seems like the only way that makes sense.
I mean, I think when you see this, like, you have to look at parallel industries, right? And when you see this adopted in the past, there has to be that starting point. The starting point's not a blank like whiteboard where we're like, hey, this is what we want it to be.
Right.
The starting point is this coalescing behind something that's built, that's there today, that we're like, okay, this still sucks, but it sucks less. And we're going to go to this method that sucks less. We're all going to agree to adopt that standard, and then we'll evolve it over time and get better and better. Like when you start to just like outline something from scratch, it's like, that's great. But it's kind of like remodeling a house versus like building from the ground up, starting with your architect. One's going to happen much quicker, and one's going to be much more affordable and doable for most companies. And so I think it's like that. What's that common thing that we can coalesce behind? And, there's varying opinions on what that one thing is today. And so I'm not going to step in that right now. And then
sure. We'll have you on for a future. We could step in that together.
Yeah. I mean, but like just think about it from an end user perspective. That's what I always come back to, is like the end users that are on our websites that are trying to plan their trips. If we have a single standard, then all of a sudden things become much better for the end user. And it's like when things become better for the end user, they become better for all of us. And that's the thing that people lose sight of. And so that single standard is bigger than any of our egos. And then kind of like wrapping back around to what Mateo was talking about a second ago, and you too as well, John, and like how, like, what do we do with something like Oahu, where they've banned short-term rentals? How can we figure out how to work with hotels there? I think sometimes it's not like this like umbrella that we all sit under and sing Kumbaya together, as much as it's like a barnacle method. Like, what got approved for the hotels? How can we exploit those same laws and just be like this barnacle that's on the ship along for the ride, and then like figure that out? Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, because that's what the hotel industry has been doing for years.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, why would we do this from scratch if they've already paved the way and they have certain things approved? Maybe it's less resistance to check some of those boxes that they have approved than to go and get a whole new approval, at least in the short term. If you run a property management company in Oahu and it just got obliterated almost overnight.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's next for you, David? Like what big, like you got a lot going on with StaySense. You got your 3 different markets. What big, audacious plans do you have in the, for yourself and for your companies?
So right now, and I know I've already mentioned it, like our goal when we launch each site is to touch every vacation in those markets. We aren't at that spot yet in Florida, and we have a long ways from that spot in Hawaii. Those are our next big goals, if you will. That's where we're taking the profits from the company and reinvesting them in the future, is becoming these sites in those areas that represent the area as well, that also drive additional visits to the area, that provide useful information to somebody as they're planning a trip. And it's like, wow, maybe I should come to the Smokies for 5 days instead of 3, or maybe I should go for a shoulder visit down to the Panhandle because the weather's so nice then. And so then all of a sudden we all start to benefit, because then those are additional nights booked. And so there is a selfish monetizable angle to it, but like what that looks like for me for the next year is making those sites like where they're just like awesome sites. Now, practically speaking, like when we look at the Smoky Mountains, we had a couple pieces of content there that drove most of our success, like on search engine rankings and things like that. And I've actually gone over that in some of the talks I've done at Verma through the years with like how to grow a site from 0 to 1 million website visitors from scratch. And like one of those was like our leaf map in the Smoky Mountains that like predicts when the leaves are going to change for the entire United States, or like how to survive in the national park when you get lost. And these kinds of things get top tier news coverage and then start to fuel results. So we're looking for the next one of those, you know, down in Florida and in Hawaii. And we're looking at things like right now, like yesterday was pricing colorblind snorkel masks and trying to develop a partnership on the colorblind snorkel masks. So somebody that's visiting Hawaii that can't see color, they have these corrective lenses that allow them to see color.
Amazing. And
then they'd be able to go check those out from Snorkel Bob's or one of the companies there free of charge and use them to see color and see the reef, you know, in full color, like most people see it, but how they've never been able to even see a blue sky, some of these people. And so we're looking at cool things like that. Well, where all of a sudden, yes, there's the PR angle on it. But yes, we're also positively touching the vacation of that family that has the colorblind individual as we're building the PR and as we're building the brand up in that spot. So those are the kinds of things that drive me, that make me tick. Like, how do we do those like fun marketing things that actually change lives or change vacations? And ultimately we want to keep doing this. And we have our like plan for world dominance, which includes like 1 million listing sites eventually and all of that. We'll see if that happens. But right now, like the focus needs to be on like doing that for brand 2 and brand 3 to then fund the future eventually.
Have you met Lorraine Woodward yet?
No.
I'm gonna make that introduction to you. You guys definitely need to meet, because she was on the panel with us, and she is, if not going to be the expert in like accessibility travel.
Awesome.
We'll talk about it off air, but I'll shout out to Lorraine. I'll definitely connect you guys.
Fantastic.
Because what she's doing,
that's awesome. Yeah. And then like accessibility travel right there is another, like, to loop back around to that standard API. Like, how do we let a listing site know that this is accessible or mobile friendly, even if it's not fully accessible? Because sometimes that's good enough. If grandma can make it up 2 steps to the main floor and then be part of the vacation, it doesn't have to be a ramp. But like, how do we communicate these things to end users where grandma wants to be part of the vacation and like, you know, the family wants grandma part of the vacation. And so like, we need a way as like, you know, Hopper or SmokyMountains.com or whatever listing site to be able to help grandma understand that she can be part of the vacation in the same way she is when they go to a hotel. And like, that's a whole different like ball of wax there, but it's one little small facet of this need for this like standardized API eventually.
Well, it's not even grandma. What about the people that's their everyday life, just regularly, and can't and don't go on vacation because they can't?
Yeah. No, my sister grew up in a wheelchair, so it's like, I get it. And it's like, there's things you can do and things you can't do. And that's just kind of like the world of that life. And and like, we can help make that world a better place. And in doing so, make the whole world a better place and our business is better.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolutely amazing conversation. We could go on forever, but we should probably go ahead and put a pin in it for today. 51st episode. If you're liking what you're hearing, go ahead and please leave a review. We're looking for our 8th review. I'm just kidding.
Listen, like, subscribe. And Dave, we're gonna have you back, man, too, because you know we just scratched the surface, brother. You know, and I love your vision. I love what you do. I love that you walk it how you talk it. So we'll definitely have you back on, man. And you're a friend of the show. Get your hat. But you're welcome anytime, brother.
Man, thanks for having me on. Pleasure speaking about short-term rentals with both of you guys. Thank you for what you're doing for the industry, and keep up the good work. Thanks.